What up, guys? That Comic Awesome here, doing another review, doing Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, number 302. Man, this feels like a really good classic Spider-Man story. If you've been following along with Spectacular Spider-Man, there's an alien invasion that is happening. To fix the alien invasion, Peter, his sister Teresa, and J. Jonah Jameson go back in time. What is interesting, though, and again, what I don't understand about the end game that's going to happen is as they are traveling back in time, Dr. Doom, who builds the time platform for them, lets them know that nothing they change in the past can affect the current timeline as is. So nothing they can do will actually change the future. So they travel back in time. Last issue, Peter meets up with his past self, and Jonah meets up with his past self, and Teresa goes to a old SHIELD buddy. And it's interesting because, again, the story's a little hokey, but it's not hokey enough to have me sit here and say it's dumb. It makes me want to know, like, what's going to happen? Like, how is what's happening in this book going to affect the timeline, affect the story, affect the overall narrative of Spider-Man? And there are things that happen in this book that you're like, ooh, like what's gonna happen? Like it literally, you turn the page and you read a panel and you're like, wow. And that's what I love about these like really good books. Daredevil 600, which if you haven't watched my review or read the book, go do that. Had a couple of those moments where like something happens and you're just like, whoa, like I got goosebumps. And that's the mark of a really good comic, and that happens in this book. So let's jump in, and as with every time with Spectacular Spider-Man, you get this childish two teenage girls gabbing back and forth about Spider-Man. I remember that the Green Goblin escaped custody after Peter revealed his identity to the world, and he's pretty mad about it. Oh no. Like, insanely furious about it. Oh no. Two teenage girls let that be written and wrote it, and it's completely awful and does not fit the tone of this book. These editors should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this to be put in front of this book. So let's get in. So you kind of get Peter in, this is past Peter in high school, which I kind of like the art in this. It's kind of grown on me. I didn't like it at first, but I like that it kind of it reminded me of like an old school cartoon, and not like old school like in the 90s, like the way Peter's face is drawn, and like kind of this, it reminded me of a 90s cartoon. I don't know why. So this girl, I think her name's Jessica, is kind of a little concerned about Peter. She's like, oh, you have late night or whatever, and he's like, pretty much piss off, which again, he's a little on edge. But then of course Flash Thompson shows up, and he's Flash Thompson from that area. He's the bully, which he has a really awesome dig on Pete. And so he's like, I'm in the mood to stick you in a locker so I don't have to watch you make girls cry anymore. So again, he's kind of standing up to this girl who he kind of calls her a nerd, but then he's like, look, you're making that girl cry, like you should be ashamed of yourself. But then now present day Pete shows up, and he's like, I don't understand what this, like, where's his other arm? Is it like behind his back? and Pete's like, hey, you're gonna look back on this, these days and be, with a whole lot of embarrassment. He's like, I'm his uncle, Johnny Parker, just visiting. And this is the best line. Like, I read this and I was like, oh my gosh. And Flash is like, whatever. Don't actually care. Be careful, man. This guy goes through uncles like you wouldn't believe. I was like, ooh, damn. Like, I saw that and I was like, damn. Like, look at Pete's face. Like, he's just like, ooh. Like, that was like a Spider-Man level burn. Like, that was a roast of roasting. This kid goes through uncles like you wouldn't believe. So, they find out that, the ousted Green Goblin escaped custody, which, by the way, for this to have happened, present-day Pete is pretty chill about it. Like, he doesn't seem all that concerned, which is kind of a little uncharacteristic of Pete. I think him knowing that nothing that he does back in this timeline really can affect the future, he's a little more laid back. Peter Parker is usually kind of borderline neurotic about things, and I think this Pete is a little more laid back and chill. So then, of course, Norman's reading. It flashes. Norman's reading the same paper. So what does he do? He goes to the Daily Bugle, and this. So, he's like, I got a list of people I'm gonna make suffer, and you're on it, Jonah. And as he's leaving, he looks at Jonah's computer, and so last issue, present day Jonah told past Jonah, look, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He's just a kid. Go easy on him. But, of course, like J. Jonah Jameson, and I don't believe that what he's about to, or what he did, was in any way, he had planned. He never planned on releasing it. Like he says, it's just a rough draft. But Norman sees on his computer, Spider-Man unmasked, Web Menace revealed to be 16-year-old Bugle photographer Peter Parker. So he's like laying out this this front page, and of course Norman sees it, and he's like, that's just a rough draft, placeholder. And so of course that gives him, he's like, just like the old saying, spare the rod, spoil the child, so long Jonah. And he blows him up. So I don't know if he actually kills the past J. Jonah Jameson, but now Norman knows Peter Parker is in fact Spider-Man, which again, like, I saw that and I was like, ooh, man, like, oh, that, what are the repercussions of this? Like, what's gonna happen? So then Jonah sees kind of that on TV. They're trying to track down the Tinkerer before he robs a bank. Meanwhile, Teresa is with Nick Fury, who's her old S.H.I.E.L.D. contact, and they go to the apartment of Mary and Richard Parker. This was their safe house. This is where they ran a lot of their missions out of. Even after they had Peter, Nick says, like, they had their little boy. It's hard to do both things, but they still ran ops out of this, kind of apartment. And, again, up until this point, Teresa is assumed, again, to be kind of like this sister. Like, they're not sure if she's actually Peter's sister. But, Nick's like, yeah, I haven't... She's like, did they have any other kids? And she's like, no. He's like, no, I don't think so. He's like, there was an opt where she pretended to be pregnant to, like, kind of break into a hospital that was a front for some, like, bio facility. But then she finds this picture, and I actually really liked this. I thought, when I first saw it, I was like, really? And then I was like, you know what? Actually, it's really cool. So then it shows Teresa being born to Mary and Richard Parker, and this is her birth certificate. So now, she said, he says, "Did you find anything?" And she's like, "I found everything." And it's like, it's actually a really endearing moment, like where she finally finds evidence that, like Mary and Peter Parker were her parents. And then you get some really cool fight scenes with, again, kind of old Pete and young Pete, where I like this. So they're flying, they're swinging, chasing the Green Goblin down. But then he just disappears. Vulture and Sandman show up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is the time." He just grabs this guy, and it's Mysterio. He's like, "That Mysterio tried to, drive us insane." I love this editor's note, like, anybody in this present day without having like a Marvel Unlimited subscription or going and buying this comic digitally is going to go, this is like the time Mysterio tried to drive us crazy to reveal our secret identity. Amazing Spider-Man number 24. And it's like, man, that's considering we're on like 790 something, I think. Yeah. It's ridiculous. But again, like, this is a good classic book. It ends in some really tight classic Spider-Man action. One thing that I do like, hang on, I just want to show this one panel. I loved this sequence here. So this is young Pete, and he kind of, something happens, but I loved this because that's like a classic old school Spider-Man thing where, like, when his spider sense would go off, it'd kind of be like half Spider-Man face, half Peter face. Like, I saw that and I was like, man, that's really awesome. This whole page setup was actually really nice. I've been enjoying Chip Zdarsky's run on Spectacular Spider-Man. I hope it keeps on the steady incline that it's on. But yeah, that's what I think. Definitely pick it up. Subscribe over here. Watch some more videos. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. And I'll see you next time.